The warning lights flashed red across the Galactic Council's monitoring station. Admiral Vexthari of the Altarian Empire stood before the massive screen, showing 12 unknown ships moving through space. They were not like any ships he had seen before. The designs were strange, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. "Sir, they came from the Outer Rim," said his aide. "They just appeared on our sensors an hour ago." Vexthari studied the ships. They moved in perfect formation, like they had been flying together for years. Most new species flew in messy groups when they first reached space. These ships moved like they knew exactly what they were doing. "Send a standard first contact probe," Vexthari ordered. "Let's see what these beings want." The probe launched toward the unknown fleet. It carried the basic message that the Galactic Council used for all new species. The message explained who the Council was and asked the newcomers to identify themselves. Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the probe approach. He was a tall man with calm eyes who had led many missions for Earth. Next to him stood Dr. Hyejin Park, a woman who had spent years studying alien languages and cultures. Commander Woojin Lee, his military advisor, watched the screens carefully. "They sent a probe just like we expected," said Woojin. Hyejin smiled. "Perfect. Time to show them what we learned." The human ships received the Council's message. Within minutes, they sent back a response that shocked everyone at the monitoring station. The reply came in over 200 different galactic languages, each translation perfect and clear. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," the message said. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We thank you for your welcome and request a meeting to discuss peaceful relations." Vexthari stared at the screen. "How do they know our languages? It takes most species decades to learn even one of our tongues." His communications officer looked confused. "Sir, these translations are better than some of our own member species can manage. They even use the formal dialects correctly." The Admiral felt something cold in his stomach. New species were supposed to be primitive, lost and seeking help. They were not supposed to speak perfect galactic languages on first contact. Back on the human flagship, Dae-ho was pleased with the response. "Dr. Park, how long did your team spend learning their languages?" 53 years, Hyejin replied. "We've been listening to their communications since we first detected them. We know more about galactic politics than most council members do." Woojin laughed. "They think this is first contact. They have no idea we've been watching them this whole time." The council's response came quickly. They wanted to meet at their main station. It was clearly meant to impress new species with the council's power and size. Dae-ho read the message and shook his head. "Tell them no. We'll meet at the neutral station at coordinates we'll provide. Equal ground for equal partners." The communications officer at the council station couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Sir, they refused to come to our main station. They want to meet somewhere else." Vexthari had never heard of a new species making demands. They usually begged for an audience with the council. "What do they want?" "They're sending coordinates for a neutral meeting place. They say it will be better for equal partners to meet on equal ground." "Equal partners?" Vexthari repeated. "They think there are equals?" Dr. Hyejin was already preparing for the meeting. She had files on every council species, their cultures, their weaknesses, and their histories. She knew which species hated each other and which ones could be trusted. She knew about their wars, their trade disputes, and their political problems. "Captain, should I prepare the usual first contact gifts?" asked her assistant. "No," Hyejin said. "We're not here to beg for acceptance. We're here to see if they're worth working with." The neutral station was small but well-equipped. It floated in empty space between two star systems. When the council delegation arrived, they found the human ships already there, arranged in a defensive pattern that any military expert would admire. Vexthari felt nervous as he boarded the station. Usually, new species waited anxiously for the council to arrive. These humans had arrived first and set up the meeting room exactly how they wanted it. Captain Dae-ho walked into the meeting room with confidence. He wore a simple but elegant uniform that showed no fear or nervousness. Dr. Hyejin carried herself like someone who had studied every person in the room for years. Commander Woojin looked like he was ready for either diplomacy or war. "Welcome," Dae-ho said in perfect Altarian. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Vexthari was surprised again. The human spoke his language like a native. You speak Altarian?" "Dr. Park and I speak 17 galactic languages," Dae-ho replied. "We believe in being prepared. During the meeting, the humans asked questions that made Vexthari uncomfortable. They wanted to know about the Council's military strength, their trade routes, and their political stability. These were not the questions of a species seeking help. These were the questions of equals evaluating potential partners. "Tell me," Dr. Hyojin said, "how does the Council handle disputes between member species? Your last 3 wars could have been avoided with better communication." Vexthari stared at her. How did she know about their internal problems? The meeting ended with no agreements. The humans said they needed time to evaluate whether joining the Council would benefit them. This was backwards from how things usually worked. The Council was supposed to evaluate new species, not the other way around. As the delegations prepared to leave, Commander Wu Jin made a casual comment that sent chills through the Council members. "Nice station design," he said, "though I noticed at least 12 ways someone could take control of it if they wanted to. You might want to upgrade your security systems." After the humans left, Vexthari sat alone in his ship thinking. These humans were not like any species the Council had ever encountered. They were confident, prepared, and seemed to know more about galactic affairs than they should. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "what do we do about them?" Vexthari looked out at the stars. "I don't know, but I have a feeling that everything is about to change." The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted for hours. Representatives from 47 different species argued about what to do with the humans. Council Speaker Mordun, a tall being with 4 arms and silver skin, tried to maintain order. "These humans are unusual," said the representative from the Kelvar Empire. "But they're still just one planet. How dangerous can they be?" "Did you not hear what their military officer said?" replied the Zathari delegate. "He identified 12 security flaws in our station design just by looking around." Morden raised all 4 hands for silence. "We will follow standard procedure. The humans will undergo our development assessment. Then we will know exactly what kind of species we are dealing with." Ambassador So-Young Choi received the Council's invitation with amusement. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent 20 years in Earth's diplomatic service. Next to her stood General Taimin Han, a quiet man who missed nothing, and engineer Mira Jung, who looked young but had helped design Earth's most advanced ships. "They want to test us," So-Young said. "How quaint. What kind of test?" asked Taimin. "The standard evaluation. Technology, culture, and military capabilities. Most species fail 60 to 70% of it." Mira looked up from her tablet. "I've been analyzing their technology during our visits. Their ships are at least 50 years behind what we have. This should be interesting." The testing facility was enormous, designed to impress visiting species with the Council's advanced technology. When the human delegation arrived, they looked around with polite interest but no awe. "Impressive," So-Young said to Morden, "though I notice you're still using quantum processors instead of bio-neural networks. Doesn't that limit your computing speed?" Morden felt confused. Most species were amazed by quantum processors. "Bio-neural networks are theoretical technology." "Not anymore," Mira said quietly. The technology test began first. The Council presented their most advanced computer and asked the humans to solve a complex mathematical problem that usually took new species several hours to complete. Mira looked at the computer and frowned. "This will take forever with this old system. May I make a few adjustments?" Before anyone could answer, she had opened several panels and begun rewiring connections. Within minutes, the computer was running 3 times faster than before. "There," she said. "That should help, though you'll still want to upgrade the core processors when you get a chance." The Council technicians stared in shock. Mira had improved their most advanced computer in 5 minutes. "How did you do that?" asked the chief engineer. "Basic efficiency improvements," Mira replied. "You had several bottlenecks in your data flow. I just removed them." The mathematical problem that should have taken hours was solved in 12 minutes. Next came the cultural assessment. The Council presented scenarios about managing different species with conflicting beliefs and customs. These tests usually revealed whether a species could handle the complexity of galactic civilization. So-Young listened to the first scenario and smiled. "You want to know how to make 2 religious groups stop fighting over a holy site?" "Most species find this very difficult," Morden said. "On Earth we have over 4,000 different religions, many sharing the same holy places. In Jerusalem alone we manage 3 major faiths and dozens of smaller ones. The solution is usually scheduling and shared responsibility." She proceeded to solve each cultural scenario with ease, often suggesting improvements to the Council's own policies. She talked about Earth's experience managing hundreds of different cultures, languages, and belief systems all on one planet. "You've done this before," observed the Corvanian representative. "Every day for thousands of years," So Young replied. "Diversity isn't a problem to solve. It's a strength to manage." The military assessment was last. General Taman was shown the Council's defensive strategies and asked to identify weaknesses. The test was designed to see if new species understood modern warfare. Taman studied the displays for several minutes. Then he began pointing out flaws that made the Council officers uncomfortable. "Your formation leaves your flanks exposed here and here," he said. "Any enemy with fast ships could exploit that. Also, your communication array is vulnerable. One targeted strike could blind your entire fleet." "These strategies have protected us for centuries," protested the Council's military advisor. "Against other Council species." "Yes," Taman replied, "but you're all using similar tactics. An outside force with different approaches could cause serious problems." He continued for an hour, identifying 17 major weaknesses in what the Council considered their strongest defenses. His suggestions for improvements were so detailed that several officers began taking notes. "Where did you learn military strategy?" asked Admiral Vexithari, who had joined the assessment. "Earth has been in a state of constant warfare for most of our history," Taman replied. "We've learned from every conflict. Peace is something we achieved, not something we were given." When the assessment ended, the Council members gathered in private to discuss the results. The room was silent for several minutes. "They passed everything," said Morden finally. "They didn't just pass," replied Admiral Vexithari. "They exceeded our standards in every category. That engineer improved our best computer in minutes. The diplomat solved cultural problems we still struggle with. The general identified flaws in our defenses that our own experts missed." "What does this mean?" asked the Kelvar representative. "It means they're not here seeking membership," So Young's voice came from the doorway. She had been listening to their discussion. "We're here to see if you're worth joining." The Council members turned to stare at her. "You were eavesdropping?" "Your security is as weak as your technology," So Young replied. "We could hear every word from the hallway." She walked into the room without being invited. "Let me be clear about something. Earth has 12 billion people. That's more than your entire Council combined. We have technology you haven't dreamed of, experience managing diversity you can't imagine, and military knowledge earned through necessity, not handed down through tradition." The room was silent. "We're not some primitive species hoping you'll accept us." So Young continued. "We're a civilization that's been thriving while you've been struggling to keep your 47 members from fighting each other." General Taman appeared behind her. "Your last war cost millions of lives and lasted 30 years. On Earth, we've learned to prevent most conflicts before they start." Engineer Mira joined them. "Your technology peaked centuries ago and hasn't improved since. We advance every year because we have to." Morden found his voice. "What do you want from us?" So Young smiled. "Nothing. The question is what you can offer us. We're evaluating whether this Council is worth our time and effort." After the humans left, the Council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some demanded the humans be expelled from galactic space. Others argued for immediate alliance. Admiral Vexthari stood up slowly. "They're right about our defenses. Every weakness they identified was real. Their computer improvements work perfectly," admitted the chief engineer. "And their cultural solutions are already being discussed by our diplomatic corps," added Morden. The truth was settling in. The species they had expected to test and judge had instead tested and judged them. And based on the humans' reactions, the Council had not scored very well. "What do we do now?" asked the Zithari delegate. Morden looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from 47 worlds. "I think we need to learn more about these humans, and I think we need to be very careful about how we proceed." Outside the station, the human ships maintained their perfect formation. Inside, Ambassador So Young was already preparing her report for Earth. The assessment had revealed everything they needed to know about the Galactic Council. "Well?" asked General Taman. "They're not ready for us," So Young replied. "But they might be worth teaching." 3 days after the assessment, Admiral Jinwoo Kang was reviewing reports on his flagship when the alert came in. He was a veteran space commander who had fought in Earth's asteroid wars 20 years earlier. His calm face showed no emotion as his communications officer delivered the news. Sir, Captain Nariseo's scout ship has been attacked by unknown vessels. We've lost all contact. Jinwoo studied the tactical display. Captain Seo had been exploring a nearby system, collecting data on local space traffic. Her ship, the Soul, was one of their newest designs but appeared to be just a simple scout vessel. Who attacked her? Jinwoo asked. Krathon Empire ships, sir. 5 heavy cruisers. They came out of hyperspace and opened fire without warning. Dr. Kyung Soo-yoon looked up from his science station. He was a quiet man who studied alien technology and had been analyzing Council ship designs. The Krathons are one of the more aggressive Council members. They probably wanted to test our capabilities. Jinwoo nodded. How long until we reach the attack site? 2 hours at maximum speed, sir. Then we'd better get moving. At the Galactic Council station, Admiral Vexithari received the news with growing concern. The Krathon attack had not been authorized by the Council. General Throck of the Krathon Empire had acted on his own, probably hoping to intimidate the humans. This is bad, said Council Speaker Morden. If the humans retreat now, they'll look weak. Other aggressive species might follow the Krathon example. And if they don't retreat, asked Vexthari, then we'll see what these humans are really capable of. The Krathon attack fleet waited at the coordinates where they had destroyed the human scout ship. General Throck, a massive warrior with thick armor and glowing red eyes, stood on his command bridge feeling satisfied. 1 shot, he told his officers. 1 shot and their little ship was space dust. These humans are no threat to anyone. His tactical officer looked worried. Sir, I'm reading 5 ships approaching. They appear to be human vessels. Throck laughed. 5 ships? I have 20 vessels in this fleet. This will be even easier than I thought. When the human ships came into view, they looked peaceful. No weapons were visible, and they moved slowly as if they were exploring rather than fighting. Human vessels, Throck broadcast. You have entered Krathon territory. Leave now or face destruction like your scout ship. Admiral Jinwoo's voice came back calm and steady. General Throck, we are here to recover our crew member and investigate the unprovoked attack on our vessel. Please withdraw your ships to avoid further incident, Throck roared with laughter. Your crew member is dead. Your ship is debris, and you dare make demands of me? I see, Jinwoo replied. Then we have a problem. What happened next would be discussed in galactic military academies for decades. The human ships seemed to shimmer for a moment, then suddenly there were dozens of them. Some were larger than anything the Krathons had ever seen. Others were small and fast, moving like living creatures through space. What in the void? Throck stared at his screens. Where did they all come from? His sensors showed over 30 human vessels surrounding his fleet. But that was impossible. Only 5 ships had approached. Sir, his tactical officer said with a shaking voice, I think they have some kind of cloaking technology. Before Throck could respond, every weapon on every Krathon ship simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, just turned off. The ships themselves continued to function, but their weapons were completely useless. Impossible, Throck shouted. What did they do? Dr. Kyung-soo's voice came over the communications channel. General Throck, this is Dr. Yoon of the human fleet. We have temporarily disabled your weapon systems using a targeted electromagnetic pulse. Your ships are undamaged and your crew is safe. You can't do that, Throck protested. No one has that technology. Apparently we do, replied Admiral Jinwoo. Now, about our crew member. A new voice joined the conversation, one that made General Throck's eyes widen in shock. Hello, Admiral. This is Captain Nariseo. Sorry for the radio silence, but I had to maintain communications blackout while I recorded the attack. Captain Seo? Jinwoo sounded pleased but not surprised. Status report. All systems green, sir. The Soul was never actually hit. We activated our defensive systems when the Krathons opened fire. They destroyed a holographic projection while we remained cloaked nearby. General Throck felt his blood turn cold. That's impossible. We saw your ship explode. Captain Seo's ship suddenly appeared right next to Throck's flagship, close enough that he could see her through the bridge windows. She was a young woman with a confident smile who looked completely unbothered by being surrounded by enemy ships. Hello, General, she said with a small wave. Nice shooting. You really destroyed that hologram convincingly. The Krathon fleet was trapped. They were surrounded by ships with technology they didn't understand. Their weapons were useless. And their victim had been watching them the entire time. Dr. Kyung-soo began broadcasting a technical analysis to all nearby ships. including the Galactic Council monitoring station. His calm, scientific voice explained exactly what had happened. The Krathon attack relied on standard galactic warfare tactics, he said. Overwhelming firepower, direct confrontation, and intimidation. These tactics work against opponents with similar technology and thinking. He brought up detailed scans of the Krathon ships. However, the Krathon weapons use focused plasma beams that can be disrupted by properly calibrated electromagnetic fields. Their targeting systems rely on quantum sensors that become confused when faced with our holographic decoys. The analysis continued for several minutes, picking apart every aspect of the Krathon attack and explaining why it had been doomed from the start. Admiral Vexithari listened to the broadcast with growing amazement. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had recorded everything and were now teaching the entire galaxy about the weaknesses in Krathon technology. Are they sharing military intelligence with everyone? He asked. It appears so, replied his intelligence officer. They're broadcasting on all channels. Every species in this region can hear this analysis. Back at the battle site, Admiral Jinwoo was making his position clear. General Throck, your attack on our vessel was unprovoked and illegal under galactic law. However, we prefer peaceful solutions to military ones. What do you want? Throck asked, his voice much smaller than before. An apology would be appropriate. Also, we recommend you upgrade your weapon systems. The flaws Dr. Yoon identified make your ships vulnerable to anyone with basic electromagnetic technology. You're giving us military advice? We're trying to prevent future incidents. Dead enemies are still dead people. We prefer living former enemies who have learned better. The human ships began to withdraw, their advanced technology allowing them to seemingly vanish into space. But before they left, Admiral Jinwoo made one final statement that was heard throughout the galaxy. To all species monitoring this broadcast, humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations. We have no desire for conquest or dominance. However, we will defend ourselves and our allies against unprovoked aggression. Our technology may seem advanced, but our principles are simple. We believe in cooperation over conflict, innovation over stagnation, and protection of the innocent over exploitation of the weak. We invite all species who share these values to join us in building a better future for the galaxy. When the transmission ended, General Throck was left floating in space with a disabled fleet and a shattered reputation. The humans had defeated him without firing a shot, humiliated him without being cruel, and then offered to help him improve his defenses. At the council station, Admiral Vexithari sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he turned to Council Speaker Morden. Those weren't scout ships, he said quietly. No, Morden agreed. Those were warships pretending to be scout ships. And if those were their scouts, what do their real military vessels look like? The question hung in the air, unanswered and frightening. Dr. Kyung-soo's analysis had revealed something else that worried the council. The humans had studied galactic technology so thoroughly that they understood its weaknesses better than the species who built it. They hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated that the entire galactic military structure was obsolete. Sir, the communications officer said quietly, we're receiving messages from 17 different species. They all want to know more about the human alliance offer. Vexithari closed his eyes. The galaxy was changing and he wasn't sure the council was ready for what came next. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their history. Representatives from all 47 member species had gathered to discuss the human demonstration. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species that had never agreed on anything found themselves united in confusion and fear. Council Archivist Kelnara, an ancient being whose people had been studying galactic civilizations for millennia, stood at the center of the chamber. Her 6 eyes moved slowly as she scanned the assembled delegates. We need answers, she said in her deep, melodic voice. How did an isolated species develop technology that makes our finest warships look like children's toys? Admiral Vexithari activated the holographic display, showing the battle with the Krathons. They disabled 20 ships without firing a shot. Their scout vessel survived a direct hit from plasma cannons by being somewhere else entirely. This is not normal technological development. Maybe they're lying about being from one planet, suggested the Varaxian delegate. Maybe they're actually an ancient empire pretending to be newcomers. Kelnara shook her head. Our records go back 50,000 years. There is no mention of humans anywhere in galactic history. They truly did develop in isolation. Then how? Demanded General Korthak of the Zilonian Confederacy. No species develops that fast. It's impossible. The answer came from an unexpected source. Professor Hosiok Lim walked into the chamber without being announced. He was an elderly human with kind eyes and a gentle smile who seemed completely comfortable, being surrounded by alien beings that could crush him without effort. You invited us to explain ourselves, he said pleasantly. So here I am. Behind him came Director Yunji Bei, a middle-aged woman who carried herself with the confidence of someone used to managing complex projects. Captain Eugene Moon followed, a veteran space explorer whose calm demeanor suggested he had seen many strange things in his travels. Professor Lim, said Council Speaker Mordun, we need to understand how humanity achieved such advanced technology. Hosiok smiled and activated his own holographic display. The answer is simple, but it might be difficult for you to accept. The display showed Earth floating in space, a blue and green world that looked peaceful and beautiful. This is our home, Hosiok said. One planet, 12 billion people, limited resources, and a very challenging environment. Limited resources? Asked the Alterian representative. But surely you expanded to other worlds as your population grew. No, replied Director Unji. We stayed on Earth until we had learned to live sustainably. We couldn't afford to waste anything, so we learned to make everything count. The display changed to show human cities, vast and efficient, with vertical farms and recycling systems that used every scrap of material. You see, Hosiok explained, most species expand into space because they need more resources. You spread across multiple worlds, mine asteroids, and use the galaxy's abundance. There's nothing wrong with that, but it has consequences. Captain Eugen stepped forward. When you have unlimited space and resources, you don't need to be efficient. You can build bigger ships instead of better ships. You can mine new asteroids instead of recycling old materials. You can move to new planets instead of solving problems on old ones. The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. But we couldn't do any of that, Hosiok continued. We had one planet and finite resources. Every piece of technology had to work perfectly, because we couldn't afford to waste materials on failed experiments. Director Yunji brought up technical displays showing human manufacturing processes. When you only have limited rare metals, you learn to make computers that are smaller and more powerful. When you have limited energy, you develop more efficient engines. When you have limited space, you create better recycling systems. Necessity drives innovation, Hosiok said simply. You've had abundance for so long that you've forgotten how to innovate. Admiral Vexthari felt something cold in his stomach. Are you saying our abundance made us weak? Not weak, Captain Eugen replied. Comfortable. When you can solve problems by throwing more resources at them, you stop looking for elegant solutions. The display changed again, showing human history, wars, disasters, and conflicts that had shaped their development. Earth was never peaceful, Hosiok explained. We had hundreds of different nations, thousands of different cultures, and countless conflicts. But we learned something important from all that fighting. What? Asked Kelnara. That cooperation works better than conquest. That diversity makes you stronger, not weaker. That the best solutions come from combining different ideas, not forcing everyone to think the same way. Director Unji nodded. When you have limited resources, you can't afford to exclude good ideas because they come from people who look different from you. We learn to value intelligence and creativity regardless of where it came from. But your military technology, protested General Korthak. How did you develop such advanced weapons? Captain Eugen's expression grew serious. We didn't develop weapons. We developed solutions to problems. The technology that disabled the Krathon ships was originally designed to protect our satellites from solar storms. Our cloaking technology was developed to hide research stations from space debris, added Director Yunji. Our advanced ships are just very efficient designs because we couldn't afford to waste fuel. Hosiok smiled sadly. We've spent our entire history learning to do more with less. You've spent your history learning to do the same with more. The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. Their greatest strength, unlimited space and resources, had become their greatest weakness. They had grown comfortable and stopped innovating while humanity had been forced to become better at everything just to survive. "There's something else," Captain Eugene said quietly. "Something that might be even more important than technology." "What?" asked Morden. "We learned to manage diversity. Earth has over 7,000 different languages, 4,000 religions, and hundreds of different political systems, and they all exist on one planet." Director Yunji brought up a map of Earth showing the incredible variety of human cultures. "We didn't just learn to tolerate differences. We learned to use them as strengths. Different cultures see problems differently, which means they find different solutions. Your Galactic Council has 47 member species," Hosok observed. "But you treat diversity as a problem to manage rather than a resource to exploit. You try to make everyone follow the same rules instead of learning from their differences." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates began arguing about human arrogance and presumption. Professor Hosiok waited patiently for the noise to die down. When it did, he spoke again in his gentle voice. "You asked how we developed our technology. I've told you. But there's one more thing you need to understand." "What?" demanded Admiral Vexithari. "We're not here to replace you. We're here to offer you what we learned. Every problem you're facing, resource scarcity, territorial conflicts, technological stagnation, we've already solved these problems on Earth." Director Yunji stepped forward. "We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to improve it. We want to share what we've learned so everyone can benefit." "And if we refuse?" asked the Varaxian delegate. Captain Eugene shrugged. "Then you refuse. We'll continue working with species that want to cooperate, and you can continue doing things the way you always have. But understand this," Hosok added. "The galaxy is changing whether you participate or not. Other species are already asking about our alliance offer. They're interested in learning our methods." The implications were clear. The Council could adapt and learn from humanity, or they could be left behind as the galaxy moved forward without them. Kelnara had been silent throughout the explanation, but now she spoke. "You're saying that our abundance made us lazy, while your scarcity made you innovative." "Yes," Hosiok replied, "but also that scarcity taught us cooperation while abundance taught you competition. We learned to work together because we had to. You learned to fight over resources because you could afford to waste them. The question now," Director Yunji said, "is whether you want to learn new ways of doing things, or whether you prefer the old ways." The chamber fell silent as 47 different species contemplated a future they weren't sure they understood. Outside the station, human ships waited patiently in space. They had delivered their message and answered the questions. Now it was up to the galaxy to decide what came next. But deep in their hearts, every council member knew that the old galaxy was already gone. The only question was what the new one would look like. 6 weeks after Professor Hosiok's revelation, the largest fleet in galactic history approached the council station. But this was not an invasion force. At its head flew a magnificent ship that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built, yet moved with the grace of a living creature through space. President Dae-Young Park stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Unity, watching the Council station grow larger on the screens. He was a calm man in his 60s, who had led Earth through its transition from a single-world civilization to a galactic power. Behind him stood Admiral Ha-Young Kim, a veteran commander whose ships had explored more space in the past 5 years than the Council had in the past century. "Sir," said the communications officer, "the Council is requesting permission to board and inspect our fleet." President Park smiled. "Tell them they're welcome to come aboard. All of them." Ambassador Min Ho Choi, who had been handling preliminary negotiations, looked up from his reports. "Sir, are you sure?" "There are over 200 delegates requesting tours." "All of them," Park repeated. It's time they understood what we're really offering. At the council station, Admiral Vexithari stared at the readings coming from his sensors. The human fleet consisted of over 300 ships, but the technology was beyond anything his instruments could properly analyze. "Sir," his science officer said with a shaking voice, "I'm reading power signatures that shouldn't be possible. And these ship designs, some of them appear to be using principles our physics says are impossible." Council Speaker Mordoon stood beside him, equally amazed. "How many species could build a fleet like that?" "Based on our records," replied Archivist Kelnara, "every known galactic civilization combined couldn't produce even one ship with these capabilities." Then how did they build 300 of them? Asked Morden. The answer came in the first group of council delegates to board the Unity. They found the corridors filled not just with humans, but with beings from species they had never seen before. "Welcome aboard," said Admiral Hai-Young, greeting the delegation personally. "Let me introduce you to some of our alliance partners." She gestured to a tall crystalline being whose body seemed to be made of living diamond. "This is Engineer Zarthol of the Prism Collective. They've been working with us for 3 years. 3 years? Admiral Vexthari stared at the being. "We've never heard of the Prism Collective. Because you never looked for us?" Zarthol replied in a voice like singing crystal. "Humans found us when we were still primitive. They offered knowledge and partnership instead of conquest or ignorance." A small furry creature with 6 arms scurried forward. "I am Trader Vixlin of the Nexus clans. Humans taught us engineering. We taught them navigation. Together we built these ships." Admiral Vexathari felt his worldview crumbling. "How many species are in your alliance?" "Currently 43, Admiral Hai-Young replied, "with another dozen considering membership." 43? Morden could barely speak. "That's almost as many as our entire council." "And growing every month," said Ambassador Minho, joining the group. "Turns out a lot of species were waiting for someone to offer cooperation instead of domination." The tour continued through the ship, revealing technology that seemed like magic to the council delegates. Plants that grew into circuit boards, crystals that stored data in living light, and engines that bent space without the massive energy requirements of council ships. "This is impossible," whispered the Alterian representative. "Our best scientists say these technologies can't exist." A young human engineer overheard her. "Your scientists are working with the assumption that everything has to be built from dead materials. We learned to work with living systems. They're much more efficient." President Park was waiting in the main conference room when the delegates finally assembled. The room itself was a marvel, with walls that seemed to be made of flowing water and a ceiling that showed real-time images of space around them. "Welcome," Park said simply. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." "What invitation?" demanded General Korthak. "You said you wanted to discuss our membership in your alliance." "No," Park corrected gently. "We invited you to consider joining our alliance. But first we wanted you to understand what that means." Ambassador Minho activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were highlighted in blue, representing the human alliance. "Over the past 5 years," Minho explained, "we've been exploring beyond the Council's territory. We found many species that your records list as too primitive or unable to achieve spaceflight. Those species lack the technology for galactic civilization," protested Morden. "They lacked the opportunity," Admiral Hai-Young corrected. "We offered them partnership and knowledge sharing. Most of them advanced decades in just a few years." The display zoomed in on specific systems, showing thriving civilizations that had been transformed by human cooperation. "The singing stones were living in caves when we found them," explained President Park. "Now they're our best architects. The cloud dancers were stuck on their gas giant homeworld. Now they help us navigate nebulae that no one else can cross." "You're saying you uplifted primitive species?" asked Kelnara. "We're saying we helped willing partners develop their potential," Park replied. "We didn't force change on anyone. We offered knowledge and let them choose how to use it." Admiral Vexathari studied the display with growing alarm. "This alliance of yours controls a quarter of the galaxy." "We partner with a quarter of the galaxy," Admiral Hai-Young corrected. "Control implies ownership. We believe in cooperation between equals." "But surely you have some form of government," insisted Morden. "Some way of making decisions." Ambassador Minho smiled. "We do. Every major decision is made by council vote. Every species gets equal representation regardless of size or technological level." "That's chaos," protested the Varaxian delegate. "Small species would outvote large ones. Actually, it works quite well," said President Park. "When everyone has an equal voice, you find solutions that work for everyone instead of solutions that benefit only the powerful." The presentation continued for hours, showing the achievements of the human alliance. Worlds that had been barren were now gardens. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now partners. Technology advanced at a rate that stunned the council delegates. "How do you manage it all?" asked Archivist Kelnara. "We don't manage it," Park replied. We coordinated. Big difference. Management implies control from above. Coordination means working together toward common goals. But what if species disagree? Asked Admiral Vexithari. Then they disagree, shrugged Admiral Hai Young. Disagreement isn't a crisis. It's an opportunity to find better solutions. As the day progressed, it became clear that the Council faced a choice that would define the future of galactic civilization. They could join the human alliance and adapt to new ways of thinking, or they could maintain their current system while the galaxy evolved around them. What exactly are you offering us? Asked Morden finally. President Park stood and walked to the viewing wall, looking out at the stars. We're offering you a chance to be part of something better than what you have now. Your council has lasted thousands of years, he continued, but it's not growing or improving. Your member species fight the same wars, face the same problems, and make the same mistakes decade after decade. We're offering you a different approach. Instead of managing conflicts, we prevent them. Instead of competing for resources, we share knowledge that makes everyone more efficient. Instead of fearing change, we embrace it as opportunity. Ambassador Minho joined him at the window. We're not asking you to abandon what you've built. We're asking you to let it evolve into something better. And if we refuse? Asked General Korthak. Then you refuse, Admiral Hai Young replied. We'll continue working with species that want to cooperate. You can continue doing things the way you always have. But understand, President Park added quietly, the galaxy is changing whether you participate or not. In 5 years, we've helped 43 species achieve things they never thought possible. In 10 years, where do you think they'll be? And where will you be? The truth was becoming clear to every delegate in the room. The Human Alliance wasn't competing with the Galactic Council. They were replacing it with something better. We need time to consider, said Morden. Of course, Park replied. Take all the time you need. But remember that while you're deciding, the rest of the galaxy is moving forward. As the council delegates returned to their station, they carried with them the knowledge that everything had changed. The galaxy they had known for millennia was gone, replaced by something they barely understood. What do we do? Asked Admiral Vexthari. Morden looked out at the human fleet where ships from dozens of species worked together in perfect harmony. I think we learn, and I think we hope they're patient teachers. 3 months later, the Galactic Council voted to join the Human Alliance. It wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. 5 species chose to leave the Council rather than join the Alliance, but 38 others embraced the change. The transition wasn't easy. Learning to cooperate instead of compete took time. Learning to share instead of hoard required effort. Learning to see diversity as strength instead of weakness challenged thousands of years of thinking. But within a year,